Ladies and gentlemen, the show is about to begin.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nader Naimirat, and welcome to this Friday's edition of Beauty Independent in Conversation webinar series. This program is brought to you with the help of two of my amazing colleagues, Jane the General Carlson and Ale Gutierrez Spear. Now, if you're not familiar with our house rules, I'll just go through them very quickly for you. We will be sharing lots and lots of amazing content. Our team has been up burning the midnight oil, putting together some beautiful slides. And so we encourage you to use a large format screen, such as your desktop or tablet, to enjoy these beautiful slides. And if you have a question, keep in mind that you're muted. Now, we strongly encourage you to ask as many questions as you'd like, but if you want to pose a question to one or more of our panelists, please use the chat function within Zoom. Don't raise your hand in Zoom, that does nothing. Just type in your question in Zoom. Make sure it's clear who you're addressing the question to so the right person knows when to respond, and then wait for a response, and your life will probably change for the better. If you're going to use the chat function, please keep in mind that it's not there for either personal or your company's promotion, unless you're a member of the Derme or Europelab division, in which case you can promote as much as you like because you sponsored this webinar. But everybody else, no promotion, please. And finally, you are definitely going to want to watch this episode over and over again because it is dense with amazing content. And so if you'd like to do that, you just go to the replay section of our webinar. We'll also send out an email with full audio video recording within 24 hours of its completion. All right, so what are we covering here? The three spotlight series that we're doing cover product development. Now, this is a broad area, covers many different categories, different types of products. And what we decided to do is really focus on three of the most either common or fastest growing categories. So today we're going to talk about skin health products, which is really the foundational level. Think of that as the starch that you need in every meal, okay? Everybody at some point needs to be able to master this if you're going to have some kind of a portfolio. And as you know, skincare is super hot right now. It's one of the fastest growing categories going in and coming out of the pandemic. And then the two other categories we're going to cover are going to build on this. We're going to talk about feminine hygiene products in January. And in our last episode, we're going to talk about two very cool categories, both of which have seen amazing growth with a lot of great innovation, and that's SPF and acne care products. Now, this webinar is brought together to you with the generosity of our sponsor, Europelab, which is a division of Derme & Co. If you have any questions for this group post-webinar, then the best person to call is Sarah Teixeira. She's up in Montreal. She's an amazing person, supremely helpful, very friendly, and most importantly, very, very knowledgeable. That's her email down there, sarah@derme.ca. And they're Canadian, and not to, push stereotypes, she's also incredibly polite and very, very nice, in case I forgot to mention that. Okay, who do we have here to talk about this subject with us? Well, we have three people. I'm going to go in actually the reverse order that they're shown here, because we always show our panelists in alphabetical order. We're going to start with Manon. Manon is a founder of Derme & Co. and Europelab. Now, as you said, Europelab is a division of Derme & Co. And without going into a lot of detail of what the company does, essentially they do soup to nuts formulation and manufacturing for some of the leading skincare brands around the world. They have definite areas of specialization, which you'll hear about as we go through our webinar. And what they really focus on is bringing leading ingredients and formulation to their customers. If you want the cheapest stuff that you can sell at the lowest price at a mass retailer, these are probably not the people you want to call. But if you're looking at bringing cutting edge technology to your customers or a difficult formulation you need mastered, that's the group you go with. And it all starts with Manon, who has an amazing background and track history in this area. She's published, she's a speaker, she's a thought leader. People from all around the world come to get her counsel because she has tremendous amount of experience in this area. The other individual we have is Tracy Italiano, who's also been with this company for many, many years. And what Tracy has done is really help a wide variety of clients, both in North America, and other places in the world really bring their products to market. As we'll hear in a minute from my third guest, this is a journey, building your product portfolio, picking out the right ingredients, developing the right products. It's a journey, and it's a very iterative process. And people like Tracy are your usher, your guide, your co-pilot to help you through that process. So Tracy will be talking about a lot from her experience on how to pick ingredients and build a product line. And then finally, the one and only Peter Clarkson, co-founder of Protégé. What Peter will be providing is a real life case study of how this whole process can work. Peter and his co-founder recently launched their brand Protégé, so they're fresh to market. And a lot of the experiences that Peter had bringing his product to market from ideation all the way to something that's sold on his website, that journey is very valuable. And it's something that he's going to cover for us at a high level with some key learnings. Okay, so before we get started, I wanted to establish some boundaries here, so to speak. First of all is, a lot of times people talk about anti-aging. Why am I bringing this up? Because it's kind of a controversial term, and it often is substituted for skin health because many of the things that we associate with aging kind of get lumped into that area. And the problem with that is that, first of all, aging is a natural process. In fact, dying is one of the most human things you can do. Not to get morbid with you around Christmas time on a Friday afternoon, but the truth of the matter is aging is going to happen whether you like it or not. So stopping it's not really that natural. Secondly, as Manon will talk about this, it's something that's really driven by genetics and the environment. And the rate and manifestation of that can vary from person to person, from location to location. And next is that there is no objective standard for aging. In many other categories, for example, when you're looking at pigmentation or redness or level of acne, there are clinically validated measures that people can do to either rate or scale how bad this condition is, the severity of it. Whereas with aging, there is no objective standard for what a 25-year-old should look like. As a result, what we're going to talk about today is skin health. Key to that is understanding the underlying physiology, because what we want to do is work with the body's natural process. That's the most effective and efficient way to achieve your goals, is to work with the body's natural process. The other thing we want to do is to follow the science. And that's something that you'll hear from the Derme & Co team, which is one of the reasons why beauty, for example, compared to fashion, has been so innovative, is because it's science driven. There are people out there doing real science, trying to figure out real problems. And we see that manifested in the products that are coming to market, especially in terms of ingredients. So when you're looking for solutions, when you're looking for ingredients to use, you need to follow the science and go where the real outcomes are. Next is what we should be aiming for, and what my panelists are going to talk about is how to help people, each individual, and that's important, reach their best possible skin, reaching their full potential with the right combination of products and ingredients to get them there. And of course, that means it has to be customized. One thing that works for a person in country A may not work for another person in country B because of differences in genetic and environment. And then finally, and this is something that Tracy will talk about, is that we want to make sure that when we're formulating these products, when we're thinking about solutions, we don't end up doing more damage than good. It's a famous example that Manon brought about a fragrance that used a particular ingredient that ended up basically giving people hyperpigmentation for life because they didn't realize it was photosensitive. So every time you're trying to do good, you also have to make sure that you're not doing harm. Okay. With that said, let me give you a quick outline of what we're going to be covering today. First of all, Manon is going to start us off with the anatomy and physiology of the skin. She's going to ground us and provide us with a basic understanding of how skin works. That is important because when you're thinking about conditions or solutions, all of that needs to be anchored in human physiology. We all may be different, but we all have the same basic skin structure. So that is the lowest common denominator that we have to start at. Then what Manon is going to do is talk to us about factors that affect skincare. I've touched on this briefly. She's going to go deeper and help us understand what are those factors that can make two different people have completely different outcomes, even to the same product. And then she's going to talk about the common problems. And the reason I say common is because you can take a 3-year course in dermatology studying all the various skin conditions out there. We're not going to do that. What Manon is going to do is cover a subset of those that are most relevant and most common to people developing a skincare line, knowing full well that there are many, many more out there that you could potentially go after. But we only have an hour and a half today. Then we're going to change tracks. I'm going to go to Tracy. And Tracy's going to talk about known solutions. She's going to provide us a high-level overview of the different types of ingredients that are available, how they link back to the problems that Manon has talked about, and just give you some examples of various ingredients that work, whether they're natural or in some cases, there are synthetics that people need to consider depending on what objectives they have. And then finally, what Tracy is going to help us understand is how you can package this stuff into a product line that actually people can buy and use. And then finally, after this, we're going to completely change track and we're going to go to our friend Peter, who's going to provide us basically a quick case study of how all of this comes together in his experience in putting Protégé together. Sound good? All right, let's get started here. I'm going to stop my sharing and pass the baton over to Manon. Manon, I apologize. It took 2 minutes longer than I was supposed to.
No, it's absolutely perfect. And thank you for having me. And hello, everyone. So, okay, now let me just share my screen. Here we go. Okay. There we go. So I'm going to do a quick review on anatomy and physiology. We would need more than 20 minutes, so that's what it should be taking. So let me kind of guide you down and really explain what we're trying to reach when we do formulation. It's very complex, and we really need to understand all the little different skin cells in order to really achieve our results. So first of all, we need to know what is the purpose of the skin. We have 20 to 22 feet of square feet of 2 square meters of skin. So it's the largest organ on our body when we're an adult, of course. So we need to realize that this is really how it has a purpose. So we know that it protects us from microbes and different elements. We know that on our skin, we have that microbiota. That's a popular terminology to explain that, there's different bacteria, microbiomes that exist, and all in balance, some pathogen, some not pathogen, and all in balance will help you have better immunity, have better function overall of your skin. So this needs to be considered. And of course, it allows us to have the sensation of touch, heat, and of course, cold. So we're going to dig in and start from the bottom up so we can understand the complexity and the advancement as well. So first of all, the first layer at the bottom, coming out from the bottom up. So when we formulate, for example, body products, that's very important for you to know, and also understand the name. So hypodermis is a common name, or subcutaneous layer, or subcutis. So it contains fat, connective tissue, also stem cells. It contains your vascular system. So, it needs to be healthy, and that's where all your adipose cells are basically built. So that really represents the disposition of your fat. But what's important is that we have an endocrine system in there. And that endocrine system gives you, at different times, as we know, especially in women, we do not produce as much estrogen. So I don't want to go too much in that detail, but it's important to know that this also, this is where your production of certain hormones also will be produced, like the cytokines. So that's your inflammatory, reactive, let's say, hormones. Leptin, estrogen, of course, resistant. And of course, the hypodermis serves as insulator, shock absorber, and of course, an energy reserve. So that's the bottom part. Go to the middle, the second layer of the skin. So we kind of divide it in 3. So the second layer of the skin, the most important for all of us, it's where the cells are really living and the most influent in how our skin's going to be reacting, depending, of course, of our gene, as we mentioned. So we need to know that there's 1.5 to 4 millimeter thick. So depending on your genetics, some will have it thicker and some thinner. And when you have it thinner, you need to know that you have less connective substance. So fibroblast cells are in less population, and so you produce less elastin and less collagen. That's why the skin ages faster when you have that dermis tissue that is a little bit more like smaller, let's say. So fibroblast cells, we need to know that we start to decrease in our production after the age of 35. So knowing that when we develop products, we know that we want to stimulate the activity of the fibroblast so we can create more elastin, more collagen, more support of the skin, because that's your underlayer support. That's what makes really your skin hold on together. So of course it serves to store water, so that's where your moisture remains. So we need to hydrate. We always need to drink lots of water. It also regulates temperature, and it supplies the epidermis with nutrients, and that's key. So those little microarterial circulation we see here supplies the food and nutrition to the epidermis structure that we don't see on the image, but that's key. So if we don't have these vascular system in good order, then we may have issues. So poor nutrition and or redness in certain cases when there's a vascular impairment. So of course it contains your blood vessels, your red blood cells, your blue blood cells, your white blood cells, which is your lymphatic microcirculation. It includes your sebaceous gland, your sweat glands, of course your follicle falls in there. So we need to understand that, so that again, when we produce or develop a product, this is all taken in consideration. Now, epidermis. Realize that 95% of skincare products developed in the world is based on, product that is basically for the epidermis. Well, this is the upper part of it is dead cells. We're going to see this in a minute. But what we need to know is that it composes 0.5 to 1.5 millimeter thick. It serves as a barrier, so it's really your protection of keratin protection of water, UV rays, and of course foreign particles. So it really rejects, is there to protect you. We also know. So the most important part when we develop product and we want to really see a difference, we want to see a result, we know that the basal germinative layer is at the bottom of the epidermis, not on the outer, but at the bottom, just sitting onto the dermis. And remember when I said that those capillaries that you see actually feeds and give the nutrition to this basal germinative layer, which is still living. And then it goes throughout the entire skin in different layers of the skin, all the way to the stratum corneum layer. And that stratum corneum layer is the one that I was referring, that a lot of skincare company manufacture, just basically create a product that it's like a feel-good or a humectant, oil and water, water and oil, and not much going on, just to lubricate the skin and make the skin feels good. But the reality is that if you make, or you want to make a difference, we want to be able to get within the skin, get through the skin without altering, without causing any damage. So I think that's key. And here I want to point out that in the stratum corneum layer, which is the keratinocytes, they're all dead cells. It varies from 10 to 30 layers, depending on the genes and the genetics, and of course where you live. So some photo-damaged skin, for example, will have a lot more layer. Why? Because the skin is there to protect. It fights, it wants to fight. The same thing when you produce or you work with alpha hydroxy acid, sometimes, they say, wow, it's great because a low pH would exfoliate this. But in reality, if you're giving too much aggression, you can actually affect that layer of the skin, and therefore you're no longer protected. So when developing product, it's important to keep all that in mind so that we don't hurt the integrity of the skin. So that's key. And one last point, in the basal germinative layer, we have where we find, the melanocyte cells. So the melanocyte system, which affects what we call the melanogenesis. So that's where your pigmentation is produced. So it's important. Now, what are the factors? Oh, yes.
Question. You're doing so well, by the way. You're amazing on time. So can we just go back? I said two clarifications.
Yes.
First of all, I just want to go back to the melanin. So melanin, the substance that gives our skin its color or helps protect it from UV radiation, that is produced at the basal cell layer. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and approximately every 10 cells, we find a melanocyte system. It looks like an octopus. We don't have it in a visual here, but it looks like an octopus. And those little dendrites distribute the pigmentation and gives us the coloration of the skin and protection.
Got it. And the second point I think you're making, I just want to make sure I emphasize it, is you're saying, look, the skin reacts to the exterior environment. It's programmed. It's almost self-learning. So if it detects a lot of injury or insult to the outer layer, the skin may go into hyperdrive to try and create more protection. It thinks, okay, something's trying to break in here. We need to put more buffer between us, the living tissue, and the outside world. So that's why if you over exfoliate, for example, or you take too much of the skin away, you may actually be counterproductive. Basically, you're creating a callousing effect.
A callousing or hypersensitivity where the skin no longer responds to anything because it's been deprived from its immunity, because it all works. It's so complex. It's such a complex organ. So when you study all the different cells and their interaction, it's so interesting. And as you said, when we shed, it's great because we have the, in anti-wrinkle, for example, you want to use an alpha hydroxy acid. Doesn't matter if it's lactic or mandelic or glycolic or tartaric and so on. But when you use it at a lower pH, it's going to exfoliate this dead cells. So what happens is that you see, wow, there's less wrinkles. But the ones that have a vascular system that, let's say the dermis tissue is thicker and this area is thinner, you're actually aggravating it and make the capillary more as a defense. So it's all a reaction. So it's quite, very interesting to observe. So when we when we develop, we take all of this in consideration.
So for every action, there is a reaction.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you, Madam.
Well said. Now, if we look at the factor affecting skin health, so I wrote a book on body types based on Hippocrates called Anti-Aging: The Cure Based on Your Body Type. So it should have been body type evaluation, but it's important to know that mother and father, so our heritage, gives us the gene, and 50% of chances you will have that. So let's imagine you have acne, a mother or father that had acne. Most likely you have 50% of developing acne at your teenage time. So there is the DHT, the dihydrotestosterone hormone, may be triggered just because it's built in our genes. In our cells. So the genes affect many things. Of course, the coloration of the skin, the tone, the thickness. Remember the thickness of the different layers of the skin, because we're all made different. And also reaction to stimuli. So for example, the sunburn, some people will burn all the time. Again, that's from my gene, or sweat or bruise easily. So again, that's a genetic heritage. Or swell, in the legs because of the lymphatic circulation being a bit impaired, or be predisposed to rosacea. And I like to give a small example that's going to, I think give you some ideas, is that let's say in a body type that I called the red oval. So that's the sanguineous body type based on Hippocrates. That person that flush and blush all the time, they turn red easily. Well, that person could use soap and water on their skin for the rest of their lives and not having to deal with wrinkles that much, really. And they'll have this most beautiful skin where, so that's to understand that the vascular system allows the dermis tissue, so where the support is necessary, to be fully capacitated. The fibroblast cells are in full capacity, and therefore, they don't have much signs of the wrinkles and aging signs. So it's kind of nice to address that. So genes are important, and of course, lifestyle. So in the lifestyle, we look, of course, the environment you mentioned earlier. If I live in a high altitude, for example, it's been proven twins, identical twins, living in a high altitude, where there was a lot more exposure to the sun, and the other one, like both of them with the same skincare regimen, and you saw one that's very wrinkled, the one that lived in a higher altitude and had a lot of hyperpigmentation. Temperature, humidity, how much wind and exposure, of course, UV exposure, how much time you're out there or abusing from the sun rays at the wrong time, maybe pollution and allergens will affect, of course, your overall skin health. The other part, very important too, is the diet. The diet, how balanced is your diet? Even though a lot, more and more we're getting educated about the impact of diet on your skin. So if I have genetic heritage, right? I have my mother or father that had acne. And I start eating a lot of sweets, a lot of, let's say, cheese, fatty cheese, and let's say shellfish. That will actually may trigger my acne a lot more. So I need to be conscious. I need to be having a proper balance, a healthy balance diet. We know the water intake, 1.5, 2 liters per day. We know to exercise. We know to make sure that our overall, not smoking. Every time you smoke a cigarette, you damage your fibroblast cells responsible for your elasticity and your collagen in your skin. The same thing when you drink alcoholic beverages. It's damaging. It's damaging. So we need to compensate with product that will stimulate that fibroblast activity and have an impact on the skin. So sleep, you need to rest. Yoga, meditation, of course, exposure to chemicals, products. Sometimes people spend a lot of money on a cream and they keep it for years and then they put it on their skin and it may have an impact, like the reactive oxygen species may develop, like free radical. Therefore, you're buying a cream, you think it's, anti-aging, but the reality it's aging you. So we have to be aware of what kind of chemicals we're going to be exposed, like alpha hydroxy acids with low pH, too much repetitive or hydroquinone, etc. Repetitive injury to the skin, we have to treat it with full respect. It's the largest organ and it's there to protect you. So we need to do that. And of course, having the proper hygiene habits. And of course, at last, control your stress. Right. So what do we see in the common problems? So common problems, so what can go wrong really? So of course, we can talk a lot, and of course, the body may develop, for example, varicose vein, cellulite, or some fat cells. You may have more or less ingrown hairs. So somehow the pathogenic bacteria called the Propionibacterium acne will somehow collect within the follicle area, maybe after a depilation or after just a friction or after shaving, and suddenly you develop that infection. So we need to work at these, there's so many possibilities, but let's focus today really for the face, not including the neck, of course, and not including the lip. So just focus on the face. So what can go wrong? So dryness. So when the sweat gland and sebaceous gland and all the systems are not in proper balance, you can actually have dryness. So the skin often, the sebaceous gland here, produces the oil, the good oils on our skin. So when properly balanced, we get that natural moisture. And together, when mixed with the sweat glands, they have that mixture of like proper hydration. Otherwise, dryness will provoke you or will give you, flakes. So it's a bit different than dehydration. So of course we can lack of water. So our natural moisturizing factor needs to always be in place. That's why we say drink a lot of water and always use moisturizer on your skin for that not to go wrong. Then pigmentation. So pigmentation, remember, this is the epidermis, right? First layer, second layer, and subcutaneous tissue. So in the epidermis, we have at the bottom, at the basal germinative layers, the pigmentation where it's produced. So we can develop hyperpigmentation, we can develop hypopigmentation, or post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. So there again, we will address it, and it's deep down. And imagine the barrier. So we have to be conscious in product development. But it's amazing today with technology and knowledge, of course, we're able to reach down there to the melanocyte system. So to the to organize at the tyrosinase level to reorganize that melanocyte cell. So to prevent, for example, cloasma, epidermal or dermal melasma.
Manon,
and then,
real quick, what's the difference between hyper and hypopigmentation?
So hyperpigmentation is when you have an abundant pigment located in one area. Hypo is the opposite, so it's more white. So darker, hyper, and hypo, white spots.
So uneven tone, basically. I'm getting patchy tone.
Patchy skin, correct.
And then the post-inflammatory is when I pop a zit and it turns brown after a while.
It could look like that. It could look brown, and it's more inflamed. There's more inflammation to it, and the pigmentation is really at the dermal level. So it's a little more difficult to address, but it's definitely possible. And sometimes
basically the skin's trying to defend itself. It's just it's for some reason it's like, well, we're in trouble. It's going to release some melanin. Hopefully it'll make things better, but that's not really the answer in this case.
Correct. It's like a phototoxicity reaction. For example, when you apply or you take a medication, it could have that impact on the skin and cause that depigmentation or pigmentation. That's
Thank you. Thank you, Manon.
Yeah. And then the redness, well, the redness, we said that, within this structure, especially this one, it can vary between 10 to 30 cells layers, depending on our genes. So if you have a lot of redness, more likely the red blood capillary here, the arterial, is dilated. So it's like a pipe that's like, it has little holes and it causes that flush and that blush. And sometimes, I mean, of course, it's all interlinked. The venous microcirculation is sluggish. It doesn't move. The same thing with the lymphatic circulation, causing a little bit of edema, a little swelling within the skin. So all of this, it's kind of nice to know because it's down there. So you develop an anti-redness product, to consider that impact, that it's down there. It's not in the epidermis. We're talking about the upper part of the dermis tissue, and we cannot alter the epidermis structures. We need to be fully conscious about that. Oily skin, well, if you have this bag here, which is the sebaceous gland, becomes hypertrophic. That means bigger, and it produces a lot more oil. So we need to work on the receptors to be able to shrink or regulate the sebaceous activity so it doesn't produce that greasy oil that is not that same oil form or component of the good oils we want on our skin. So it's really something that we need to work deep down and control that oily or greasy skin. Then when we have that sebaceous gland that's hypertrophic, it opens up the pores. It makes it extend because of that fat is heavy, and it increases the size of the ostium and pores, and it sits there. And what happens is with air, it oxidizes. So it causes blackheads, nice word for comedons. So there's open comedons and there's closed comedons. So the open one is kind of easy. You go to your esthetician and you have them remove, or there's products that dissolve them today. But why is it reoccurring? So you want to go to the root cause of what's causing that sebaceous gland to always be extended, and why is it becoming rancid and it's sitting? That means the keratinocytes are not shedding properly because they're shedding constantly. So we want to make sure they shed, and we want to make sure that that component of porphyrin, so it's made of porphyrin, it's made of a bacteria, Propionibacterium acne, and of course, sebum. And then acne, when that happens, when there's a clog, there's all our clogging comedons, then there's an inflammation taking place because again, your skin is like, what's happening? There's an intruder. So the Propionibacterium acne, so the pathogen bacteria, comes all in force in an area because there's an occlusion. So because there's no oxygen, these proliferation takes place within the follicles and then cause infection, pimples, papules and pustules. And that's when acne takes place. So, we see a lot more porphyrin on the skin when acne, we all have Propionibacterium acne. We need those bacteria, but in symbiosis, they need to be in balance. And unfortunately, when they're off balance, that means there's a projection or a bigger amount of the Propionibacterium acne type that are pathogen and causing these pimples on the skin. And there's different grades of acne. So it goes from grade 1 to 5. Hopefully we'll talk about this at our another session. And then acne rosacea, very different. It's not bacteria related, it's mites. So we all have mites. This one is a Demodex folliculorum mites. So here, if you have tendency to have a lot of flush and blush, turn red all the time, you flush and blush, and you turn red, and you have a bit of sebaceous activity, that's either abnormal or impaired, then you may have a more development. There's a more count of those Demodex folliculorum mites, which cause pimples. They're papules. So they're little bumps on the skin that looks exactly like a vulgaris acne, but in reality, it's an acne rosacea. So there are 5 different stages of acne rosacea. It starts with rosacea and it can go all the way to ocular rosacea. So there's different stage, but we need to address acne rosacea very different than acne. Then wrinkle and laxity. I mean, the category of a skin condition that everybody wants. So of course, this is a key, and we can have laxity. We lack, of course, our fibroblast cells produces less collagen, less protein, less elastin within our skin. Our natural moisturizing factor kind of is unbalanced. So we do have water evaporation. The skin, because of the sun exposure or many other factor, and often I'd like to refer to oxidative stress, like reactive oxygen species. So it's kind of a family of species that affect you from the outside or the inside and ages you prematurely. So, and causes those wrinkles that we don't want. So either here at the epidermal structure and the corneocytes level, we see that there's a buildup. And then pigmentation takes place, and of course, wrinkle formation. And because of gravity, obviously, so when we do have less of the subcutaneous tissue, we do have that gravity taking place, and there's a whole phenomena of reaction that may occur. So we need to consider that. And this is why antioxidants is key to your formulation as well.
So Manon, just going back to that, that's, for example, one of the reasons why when a person has sudden weight loss, they may not even be that old, but they have sudden weight loss and they develop wrinkles and they have all kinds of problems on their skin that basically were hidden or were being basically masked by having more fat under their skin. So what I'm hearing you say is that, look, we need some fat. That's essential. I mean, it's as part of how we protect our body and store energy. But over time, as that balance of fat changes, and then what I think you're pointing out is that as we lose collagen and elastin, that kind of, which is what gives it the elasticity to the skin.
That support, that snapback. The
support, got it. That's when your skin feels saggier and it doesn't bounce back as easily. Got it.
Yes, and I want to also insist on the cutaneous muscles. So we have an origin and insertion of our cutaneous muscles. And that's important, a little bit like the neurotoxins that exist, like Botox and so on. So what they're trying to do, and there's products in the natural ingredients slide that will have an impact to relax the muscles, because those muscles, when they shrink, so with age, certain muscles like frontalis, the corrugator, certain muscles, temporalis, and the neck muscles, they have a tendency to shrink. So because they shrink, they basically pull the skin and you look wrinkled. So by using those ingredients that will have a relaxing impact on these cutaneous muscle, you can actually have that relaxing look. So it's also muscle and fat. So it's very complex.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So in summary, we know the skin is an essential organ and it protects us against intruder, and we need to keep its full integrity. We need to make sure we respect every cell, and especially, understanding the genetics. When you do some testing, please take all these in consideration, because lifestyle and genes also have an impact. We have a big impact. We have 50% of the role, I always say, as a skincare companies, formulators, but the consumer have a very big part as well. And of course, it's important to remain conscious, when you work or partner with a laboratory, that they are well educated about the skin and know what they're doing, because it could have a long-term impact, and affect you. So, yes.
So Manon, one of my takeaways, listening to you talk, by the way, amazing, and you did it in record time, is that the purpose of the skin isn't to make us look pretty. That's kind of how we view our skin. The purpose of our skin is to protect our body. And it's developed over course of evolution, a very complex self-calibrating mechanism to accomplish exactly that. Put an outer dead layer of skin to protect us. And then there's a whole support mechanism under it, which is basically the command and control system to make sure we get enough oil out there, enough sweat out there to regulate temperature, or produce more dead skin cells to protect the skin if it's getting repetitively injured. And from your perspective, is we need to understand and respect that, and not try to fight that system, because it's a losing battle. In the end, your body's going to win, most likely.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you allow me, one thing that's important for, I think, everyone to know is that, from here, I didn't mention, from the basal diminutive layers to the epidermis, we want that cycle to be respected. And in reality, that cycle takes anywhere from 21 days to 45 days, depending on your age and depending on your condition. So you want them to be circulating normally, so regenerate. So it's like a form of mitosis. You want to be able to respect that, not always aggress it all the time, and do the right thing with the proper ingredients and the proper synergies of ingredients.
Got it. Thank you very much. Okay,
thank you.
We are going to switch tracks, and as many of you know, I'm a man of many talents, and one of them is I'm an extraordinary slide jockey. So our sponsor specifically requested that I switch slides for them, and I said, of course. And you need to stop sharing your screen, I think, Manon, so I can start.
So sorry for that.
Okay, thank you. There we go. All right. Miss Tracy Italiano, are you ready?
I am ready. Thanks so much for all your help, Vader. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you today. So thank you all for being with us today. So now we're going to just elaborate a little bit more on what Manon presented, so that we can better understand what are the key ingredients that we know that are proven to be able to correct and to properly condition the skin types and skin conditions that we overviewed. So first and foremost, let's take a quick look at dryness, because dryness is something that can affect all of us, whether it's genetic or through lifestyle. We know that we've all experienced a little bit of dehydration when we're traveling, or maybe after a little night out, you might not have gotten as much sleep, and we can see the impact almost immediately. So here we're going to look at two different groups of ingredients. Ingredients that are considered to be humectants. Humectants are drying and capturing and holding water, whereas our emollients are more of those occlusives that will really help to maintain water within the skin and to also ultimately prevent transepidermal water loss. All moisturizers are designed to do exactly that. But the quality of ingredients that we use can really make a difference in how long those moisturizing benefits can last. So we find that with newer ingredients, we're able to really attract and lock moisture into the skin, and this can last for hours, if not days. So we're very excited about that. So first, we're going to talk about hyaluronic acid, one of our most popular products today. I think we can all agree. But there's something really to be known about HA. The most important thing that we have to look at is the molecular weight. Now, when we look at the skin, we can now kind of understand that, oh my gosh, it really takes a very specific ingredient and molecular weight to be able to get into the skin exactly where we need it to be. So that's why we're going to see, and we see today in the industry, companies that are highlighting if they're using just regular HA, or even better, high and low molecular weight HA. So we have that benefit of working superficially, but also deeper within the dermis. So aloe vera, one of the most popular ingredients that we have for dry skin today, and one of my personal favorites, as I've suffered from eczema pretty much all of my life, evening primrose oil, such an incredible source of essential fatty acids to really restore that hydrolipidic barrier on the surface of the skin. So when we look at these lipids are going to be very important, especially in a more dry skin, mature skin formulation, as we know that these lipids, or these oils, the oil gland, basically reduces the production of oil as we get older. So really comprehensive anti-aging and dryness programs will always include a good essential fatty acid as its base. And from there, we have other natural ingredients. And of course, glycerin. Glycerin is a wonderful active ingredient that we can see that has both emollient properties as well as humectant properties. So all kinds of really wonderful new advancements when it comes to dryness, not just to seal the skin, but to really deliver longer lasting hydration.
Tracy, quick question. What do those leaves mean, and why does one of them not have a leaf?
Oh, thank you, Nader. That's very, very nice of you to highlight that. So at our laboratory, of course, we're always looking for advanced sources of natural ingredients, but there will be times where synthetics will either be very comparable, easier to source, or just less expensive. So we do have some synthetic alternatives and also the natural alternatives that would be indicated with the little leaf right beside them.
Got it. So if I understand you correctly, is the market's moving towards natural ingredients?
More and
but there are more and more, but there are certain circumstances where you either just may not have a choice to use a synthetic if you're trying to accomplish a certain benefit, or perhaps is a price sensitive. I mean, what's the point of having a great skincare regimen if it bankrupts people? So it also has to be affordable. So in certain cases, you're saying, you may need to consider some synthetics.
That always, when we look at a total formula, and that's such an important thing for us to all remember today. There's so much focus on ingredients, but as a laboratory, we're really seeing that it's the total formula and how ingredients coming together can actually work synergistically. So we know that, for instance, vitamin C, requires other substances to be uptaked properly. So there's some really interesting correlations between how we bring these ingredients together as well, that maximizes their performance and their bioavailability. So for pigmentation is a really important skin type to really understand what's happening, because if we take a very fast approach and go into more of our acids, especially with the darker phototype, a good laboratory really understands what acids at what % in pH should ideally be used for each skin type and also each phototype. So even though we know that we hear, oh, kojic acid is great for hyperpigmentation, but it can actually be very sensitizing if it's not buffered and combined properly. So there's two aspects that we want to look at with hyperpigmentation. First, we want to exfoliate those dead skin cells in the stratum corneum to lift the pigments that are there. But a more comprehensive approach for hyperpigmentation will be to include ingredients like red seaweed, as an example, that actually rebalances the melagenesis. So it actually is controlling and slowing and regulating the production of melanin, which I think is really important for clients that are always battling with that little bit of post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation or even UV aging. So with pigment, just remember, we don't want to thin the skin too much, because that epidermal layer is really there as a form of natural sun protection. We know that the stratum corneum naturally filters UVA and UVB. So if we have a compromised barrier function, or if we've thinned and sensitized the skin too much, we may actually be stimulating those melanocells a little bit too much. So again, good exfoliation, but not over exfoliation, and always the right pH, I think, are very important. And we can't forget that when it comes to inflammation, pigmentation, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, we have brown, which is due to the pigment, but there can also be more of an erythema form of pigment that we can get with our lighter phototypes, specifically in the phototypes 1, 2, that we'll see in just a moment. Perfect. So redness. Now we're seeing a lot of redness, aren't we? I know that as a professional esthetician, post-COVID, as you know, a lot of clients went online and had access to all kinds of formulations, but unfortunately, they didn't necessarily have a good understanding of their skin type, or maybe even their skin condition. So we hear all of the influencers that are toting specific ingredients, but we don't know if that's the right ingredient for us. So this is where, with newer formulations, we're really customizing them for the individual and the specific need that we have. So when it comes to redness, what's very important is that we have to remember, first step, barrier function. We have to re-establish healthy barrier function as well as the microbiome, so that we can block, especially the external aggravators. Because if barrier function, and if we're using, let's say, a harsh cleanser and a harsh toner, harsh exfoliants, what will end up happening is that there's going to be a rebound, actually more cytokine or more inflammatory responses. So what we're doing with that within a lot of these ingredients is that we're actually blocking cytokines. So we're reducing that inflammation. We're reducing itchiness, burning sensations, and just general discomfort. And with the new ingredients such as caper bud, oh my goodness, we're actually now able to reinforce those capillary walls and to offer really long-lasting anti-redness and a desensitizing effect with our ingredients today.
Tracy, you mentioned this barrier function a couple of times. What do you mean by barrier function?
Oh,
I kind of think I know what it means, but I'm not sure what it means.
So Manon touched on it earlier. It's that combination of lipids from the oil gland and sebum from the sebaceous gland. The combination of both creates a hydrolipidic barrier. So hydro for water, lipidic for lipids. This barrier is essential because this is actually our natural moisturizing factors. And it's within that area that our microbiomes reside. So we really want to avoid things that are too harsh or strict because it will really sensitize the skin. And a lot of cleansers, unfortunately, have that effect. So taking into consideration a formulation of a cleanser and toner is just as equally important.
That hydrolipidic barrier is sitting above the dead skin cells, correct?
Exactly.
So it's above, it's like the full outer layer now.
Exactly. It's our natural moisturizing factor of the skin. So, but it's very, very sensitive to environment, to stress, to products. So this is where our formulations, we really want to be looking at some of these newer ingredients to really ensure that barrier function and the pH of the skin, because the pH of the skin is another really important thing that we cannot forget about. Water coming out of our taps has about a pH of 7. A healthy skin is slightly acidic, being a pH ideally between 4.5 and 5.5. So we really want to ensure that our products and formulations are balanced in a right way to ensure that ultimate health of the skin. Fantastic. All right. So now oily skin. So oily skin is something that is, again, very much genetic, but if I have a combination skin and I use a harsh sulfate-based cleanser, what I can actually be doing is causing my skin to hyper-produce oil to compensate for that lack of barrier function. So with oily skin, if it's genetic and it's due to hormone fluctuations, of course, we have some really great ingredients that will help to regulate sebum production, shrink the oil gland, and to eventually mattify the skin. We can also really help with comedones with our exfoliants, such as our AHAs, BHAs, and PHAs. Of course, we know that the BHA, specifically salicylic acid, is a wonderful, wonderful deep cleansing exfoliant for the skin, but that also has, depending on its concentration, nice anti-inflammatory effects as well. So if you remember from Manon touching on the stages of acne, even the comedone stage has a little bit of inflammation. So that's why salicylic acid has really become a gold standard with oily and acneic skin conditions. We've also found that gentle surfactants, again, remembering about the microbiome, if I strip that barrier, my skin's going to panic. It's going to say, oh my gosh, I have no more protection. I have to secrete more oil. So what a lot of consumers don't realize is that they're experiencing a little shine midday, but it might just be due to the cleanser not being adequate for them. So we also find great ingredients that will help to purify and to mattify. Silver solution, as well as our bentonite clays or other ingredients that have really nice benefits for oily skin as well. Fantastic. So wrinkles and skin laxity, we have to say that this is one of our biggest categories when it comes to formula development. I think that all of us are looking to slow down that aging process. But as we saw earlier, it really is twofold. It's not only what we use on the surface of the skin, but our lifestyle that will definitely have an impact there. So when it comes to anti-aging, vitamin A, our retinols, as well as rosehip oil, as well as bakuchiol, have really become the gold standard for anti-aging today. So we know that with vitamin A, there are many different versions. They can't really all be combined into one. So there are very gentle alternatives to retinols that are now available that actually are producing a lot less redness and sensitivity. So our vitamin A is key because that's what's going to help with that mild exfoliation of the skin, helping with the texture, the overall glow, and helping to brighten hyperpigmentation as well. So from there, we find that rosehip oil is a natural source of vitamin A and vitamin C, liposoluble as well, which is a really, really nice benefit. When we talk about antioxidants, it's important that we identify, are they water soluble or are they oil soluble? They'll have different benefits, you know, on the cell itself. So a good formulation will have antioxidants that will be both oil soluble and water soluble for that much more comprehensive approach. Vitamin C, super popular, but again, the L-ascorbic version, the acidic version, and these newer—
Sorry, Tracy, we're going to have to speed up the
Okay.
process here a little bit. Yeah,
So
because we
sorry,
still have
Nader.
one more section to go.
Of course, of course. So when it comes to wrinkles and laxity, just as a summary, we want to help to refine the grain of the skin and bring in those wonderful ingredients that are going to bring in that three-dimensional revolumizing effect. So stimulating collagen, stimulating elastin, and we can see many that are available today. So from there, when it comes to comedones, it touches a little bit on oily and acneic skin. Definitely, it is all tied together. So here we see BHA as it's going to really deep cleanse. It helps to saponify those oils that are trapped within the pores. We find that also calendula, anise, and silver combined together really works on almost all of the origins of why a comedone develops. And of course, bentonite clay, a wonderful mattifier that can be used in many different formulas for a really nice effect that will last throughout the day, and specific essential oils that will really help to saponify the blackheads to help to minimize pore size and just to keep the skin looking great. And so acne rosacea, as Manon was mentioning, it's a very, very specific skin type and one that we really need adapted ingredients for. So we know that, again, because the acne rosacea involves the Demodex follicularum mite, it will tie into the microbiome of the skin. So we found great results by incorporating prebiotics. These are the sugars that nourish the good flora on the skin to keep everybody in check and everybody in balance. Also, colloidal oatmeal has a really nice anti-inflammatory effect. Turmeric extract, another great anti-inflammatory, calendula as well. Now, the essential oils that we're using here are very innovative as they're able to destroy the eggs of the mite. So we're going to stop that vicious cycle of the mite reproducing itself. And these formulations are ideal at night when the mite is most active. So a good laboratory, a good formulator will also guide you towards when do we want to select these ingredients. Is it better in a nighttime treatment or a daytime treatment, in a serum, in a cream? So those are very important. So again, ingredient selection is really the bedrock. The source of the ingredient is also just as important to really create an effective product. Clean and green ingredients can be found more and more today, and even a brand new developing industry called green chemistry that we often incorporate within all of our formulas. So synthetics, absolutely, they do have their role, and certain formulas will need to have a combination of both. And when we basically are mixing and matching, understanding the health of the skin and the physiology of the skin will allow us to mix and match in a much more efficacious way to avoid side effects and provide additional benefits. And so with any good laboratory, they'll be able to share with you all of this experience, bringing those ingredients, the molecules, as well as the skin type together to create a really nice comprehensive approach.
So Tracy, if I understand it correctly, this is not one where I can go and just, grab ingredients and drop them in and say, okay, great, these will all add to each other, because they interact with one another, correct? And some may be water soluble, some may not be. Some may have the pH requirement, others may not. Some may be very sensitive to light, others may not. So you're dealing with the reality of physics and chemistry here. And so you need a formulator that really understands all that. It can help you navigate to see, okay, how much can I really get by adding more, or when should I just stop? Because adding more may actually be hurting the formula.
It's so true. And we've noticed, absolutely, Nutter, and we've noticed that certain active ingredients are actually better, better absorbed and better, more biocompatible in lower concentrations. So it's not always the supersized formulations that are always the best. Yeah.
All right, Trace, we got to do the next one pretty rapido. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
No, Peter, sorry.
Oh.
Peter, I apologize. Trace's last section.
Yes,
You're not going to be
absolutely.
rapido.
We're going to go
You're
through
gonna
this really quick, and we're going to summarize it all up. So again, depending on the brand that you're creating, the type of formulations, there's going to be key products, key formulas, and key ingredients that will all come together. So it's really about combining the right ingredients with the right quality of ingredients to the customer profile or to the demographic, the market that we're targeting, and to be used faithfully. It's really when we use things on a regular basis, when we can develop that perfect routine, that we will see results. So consistency and simplicity are really two key aspects to that. Perfect. So first thing, we're going to focus on cleansing, toning, and exfoliation. This is where we can really help with clients with sensitive skin, acne skin, and dry skin. It all starts here. So gentle cleansing surfactants, offering more lipid or oil-based cleansers for more drier skin are going to be really, really important. So the cleanser is just to remove those dead skin cells, but we can have a more superficial cleanse or a foaming deep cleanser that can also provide adapted cleansing depending on the skin type. Exfoliants are very important as they're going to remove that barrier of dead skin cells. We have to say that exfoliation benefits every single skin type, and it's one of those super quick and easy products that bring an instant glow to the skin. So the toner, very important, as we just touched on earlier with the pH of water and the pH of a healthy skin. Toners are designed to not only regulate pH, but can also bring in other additional benefits with more corrective ingredients. So from there, after the toning step, we'll go into now the correctives. So this can be in a form of a serum or an oil, again, adapting to a water dry dehydrated skin or a lipidic dry skin. So from there, we have a lot of options when it comes to those types of formulas, and those are going to be designed to work deeper in the skin, more so in the dermis layer, and be more corrective in general. Eye creams can be adapted to treat dark circles, puffiness, and fine lines and wrinkles. So different gel formulations or cream formulations are available to adapt to each of those customer bases. And then from there, day creams, night creams. Really, a moisturizer is a moisturizer. If it's a day cream, we might be opting for more of a lighter texture. We may want to add an SPF. And in our night creams, this is where we can also look for more richer textures or more correctives as well. So we can have a wide variety of textures as well as actives there. And for a nice little quick fix for the skin, masks will really immediately enhance the texture of the skin. And we cannot forget the most important product is sunscreen, as it is the one product that will really help to protect us from that oxidative stress from the sun and our environment.
So Tracy, my takeaway from this is that I can go and source all these cool, funky ingredients, but it's all pointless unless somebody can formulate them in a stable and efficacious way, and then help me figure out how on earth I'm going to get it to these customers, so that based on their genetics and their lifestyle, they can actually get value from all the expensive ingredients on the left-hand side. So the goal here isn't just to create more product for the sake of product, because there are landfills that need to be filled and we got to do our part to make them full. The point I think my takeaway from your point is that, look, if you're trying to provide targeted efficacy for people and you're trying to be more personalized, then you have to develop stuff that addresses their genetics and their lifestyle. So if somebody lives in a particular environment, then if they're in a polluted environment, they have to clean their skin. Otherwise, you're just putting cream on dirty skin and it's not going to do anything for them. And figuring out that portfolio and what's right for your brand, that's a key step in really deciding what type of a brand you're going to be and what kind of products you're going to bring to the market. Because doing all of this up front is just insanity.
It is, and knowing, having a good idea of who the target market is, sometimes, depending on the budgets, depending on the project, sometimes starting simpler and just really focusing on that individual need. clients are looking for more personalization. They're looking for instant results with, what they're looking for. So I think that having a good comprehensive understanding of the key target market and what products and ingredients work best will really bring a line together beautifully.
Well, speaking of target market, consistency, simplicity, let's hold on to those words because a very good-looking guy in a turtleneck is going to tell us more about it. But hold your horses, Peter, for one more second because Tracy is going to sum it all up for us.
Absolutely. So fundamental when it comes to manufacturing skincare today, we have to have a true understanding of skin physiology. A company today that focuses on skin health will have longevity more so than any company that's just looking to jump on the trendy bandwagons. So a little bit of research and a little bit of testing at the very beginning and working with the laboratory that has all of that in place are going to be really key. So we want to really maximize efficiency. And we didn't really touch too much on this today, but the source of the active ingredients, how they're extracted, as well as how they're brought together will definitely make a big difference in that total formula. But maximize efficiency based on the skin type and the environmental factors, depending on where these products will be marketed to. And again, focusing on specific skin concerns, giving clients great results will really help to build that trust from your brand, and you'll be able to expand into other areas with much more ease. So it is a golden age of ingredients, and how we can get these ingredients into the skin, as Manon was showing. Many products that are just sitting on the surface. In today's newer approach, we're really able to harness the potential of these ingredients by understanding the skin to bring together these amazing new approaches. And as we help you build your product line, we can also help to share with you all of our expertise and experiences that we've had, and the team is there to assist you in anything that you might need.
Great. Well, you guys said some pretty cool stuff here, Tracy, but that's just your claim. What I want to do is talk to one of your customers and see if any of this stuff really holds water. Do we have a customer on board? Peter, have you worked with these nice people in the past? Peter has. All right. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Nader. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. I'm great. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to switch tracks now. Thank you, Manon. Thank you, Tracy. And we're going to take a real life example here from somebody who doesn't have a background in dermatology, isn't a chemist or a biologist, but someone who's built and launched a brand, still relatively new to the market. And what Peter's going to do is really walk us through his process, starting with his background and walking through the unmet need, the idea he had, and how he brought it to the market. And through that process, you'll see a lot of what Manon and Tracy have been talking about actually brought to life in a very practical way. So with that said, Peter, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, well, first of all, two very tough acts to follow. Thank you, Manon and Tracy. To begin with, I'll introduce myself. I'm Peter Clarkson. My business partner, who I'm sure is watching right now, is Jolyn Henke. My background is in fashion modeling. By modeling standards, I am a senior citizen, so I've been doing it for quite some time, over 15 years now. Jolyn has a very different background as her MPH from Boston University and has the bulk of her experience in the medical education space. So sort of a creative and corporate type backgrounds coming together as a result of two different unmet needs that wound up kind of merging paths. So beginning with me and a little bit of my background and why this was an unmet need, of course, when one is a model and oneself is the product that you are ultimately selling to a client to work for their brand, whether it is shoes or underwear or another skincare brand or something like that, the model skin quality is going to matter. And again, depending upon what it is that you're modeling, it might be that the skin from here up is all that matters that day on set, but most of the time it's the full package. So I was sort of piecemealing together my own skincare routine with favorite ingredients of mine. And I was finding that in this space, everything was very segmented. There was a lot of 1 ounce serums that I could use. And again, I'm trying to accomplish this goal for head to toe, not just for my face. So I figured, why not? Why would I not want to correct the pigmentation issues I have from head to toe? Why would I not want to reduce fine lines and wrinkles from head to toe? At modeling castings, you're showing the back of your hands and everything. I mean, they want to see it all and make sure that everything is looking good. what I found is that in these $80 to $300 an ounce little products, all the actives were segmented. So I had one that was my HA, and I had one that was my vitamin C, and I had one that was sort of the vessel that I was trying to use to get this stuff all over my body. But what I found is, in addition to it being extremely segmented, that was also really costly. And based on what Manon and Tracy had said, I was likely mixing potions of my own that were probably doing more harm than good. So my unmet need was finding this sort of staple product solution that I could put on from head to toe that would accomplish all the same amazing things that some of my skincare products were doing, from the décolleté up everywhere. And you can take me to my next slide. Thank you, Nader. Jolene's unmet need was a bit different, and this also goes into a bit about how our paths crossed again. I actually met Jolene in an elevator about 18 years ago. This sounds like a love story. It's not. She is the little sister to my college roommate and still one of my very best friends. So I've known her family for a very long time. And roughly 5 years ago, when her mom received her ALS diagnosis, the only way in which I really knew how to contribute from afar was to, via postal exchanges, send some of my favorite skincare products to them. Jolene and her mom fondly referred to their time together when Jolene was sort of taking over for some of her mom's self-care rituals, as ALS is a degenerative disease, and it's basically the onset, typically sort of slowly, of paralysis. So Jolene was taking over a lot of her mom's self-care rituals for her, and they would call that time together spa day. So my contribution from afar was to send some of my favorite products. Diane, Jolene's mother, was a biodynamic gardener and a beekeeper. So the products that I sent her absolutely needed to be green, to say the very least. And shortly thereafter, I received a message from Jolene's brother saying that, you probably don't need to keep sending stuff. A lot of people are sending gifts. They're sort of piling up around her. Well, then Jolene intercepted and sent me a message shortly thereafter that and said, hey, what happened to those great skincare products you were sending? They were such a highlight of our spa day rituals together. So that was sort of how these two paths merged, and how skincare became more important to Jolene, and how I sort of jumped into this world again with them. And the products that I sent, like I said, they needed to be green based on my standards, based on Diane's standards. Of course, they needed to be safe. And some of the other things were that they needed to be convenient, they needed to absorb well, and it needed to be lightweight. She was in South Florida for the final years of her life, and you can't be in a super hot climate like that with really heavy products. And in addition to that, she needed a product that was efficacious, but again, absorbed very quickly, because they didn't have all the time in the world. There were concerns like blood pooling if Diane was laid flat for too long. So they needed products that worked, that they could get on her from head to toe, that were quick and efficacious. So you're starting to see where these two needs are kind of meeting each other.
So Peter, I mean, this is interesting, because this is one of the reasons I really like this case study, is that, Manon sensitizes us to think about genetics, think about lifestyle, right? Build that customer profile. Who are you going after? And you're going after a otherwise healthy young man who looks like this. He's got Getty image pictures out there that we got off the web. So that's a very different profile than an elderly lady who is battling a neurodegenerative disease, right? I mean, they couldn't be like diagonal opposites of what you're looking for. And yet you wanted to build something that could bridge both, that both a young male model and an elderly lady battling a neurodegenerative disease could use, because the commonalities that you identified was this whole area of safe ingredients, efficacy, etc.
That's exactly right.
Got it. Okay. So what's the idea?
Exactly. So then what that leaves us with is, we want a versatile staple product. And I think, like what you just said, a product that would have appealed to me, but also is necessary for Diane's life, shows and speaks to the versatility of the product. Efficacy, of course, being paramount. We do not want to create or put products out into the world, like to Tracy's point, that don't actually do things. You need to build trust with your customers, and we want to be seeing a change and difference. And again, safe for all ages. And then lastly, fitting that clean profile. Is it gluten-free? Is it cruelty-free? Is it vegan? Is it all the things that would have mattered to me, as well as Diane, the biodynamic gardener? And I think also just generally the way that consumers are buying skincare at this point, these are pretty important calls. You can go to the next one if you'd like.
So Peter, let me guess, you made this idea and you went up to labs, and once they stopped laughing at you, you were able to actually, like, seriously, this is like a magic product almost.
Pretty, yeah, sometimes we refer to it as a panacea product, which has also gotten some laughs, but I really do feel like it is somewhat that. But yes, we approached a lot of different labs who made it sound like it was the impossible, who were very much encouraging that we segment the different ingredients and come out with a line versus one SKU to begin with. And then we met the lovely people, Europelab, who were able to help us overcome these challenges of having this magic potion that fits in one bottle that also doesn't pull in any synthetic ingredients. And then because I've been very much, to use a word that we've used a lot today, sensitized to the fashion industry and to aesthetics being something that's very important in my life. And I think also just, again, to the consumer, I think skincare consumers at this point, if they're going to be spending money on a product, they want it to look damn good sitting on their countertop, and so the look and feel is as important to us to get all these things rolled into one.
Got it. So in going about your development process, from your own experience, you were already relatively well versed in ingredients. It sounds like you were reading labels, you were doing your own research. So did you already have an idea of the ingredients you wanted?
We did. Yeah, we knew what our hero ingredients were to be, and that was where the expertise of the lab was really important. Because while I knew that vitamin C was something that I wanted, while I knew that green coffee seed extract was something that I wanted, while I knew that the highest quality hyaluronic acid, like Tracy mentioned, fractionated hyaluronic acid or different molecular weight hyaluronic acid was important, I had no understanding at all. If I were to mix these things together, was the bottle going to explode? Were they going to negate one another? I mean, that was where we needed help in a lot of different arenas, and I will probably get into this later, but Europelab was available to us for the last couple of years now for weekly phone calls, even in weeks where we, in the middle of the pandemic, had not so much going on. We had our 30-minute conference call every single week, and we're able to pick their brains. Sometimes it wasn't even about what the formula was. It was just seeking advice in other arenas. So that's kind of a nice segue into us meeting Europelab, who was able to help us create this product that focused on, we won't call it the anti-aging piece like we've already touched on, but something that addressed the fine lines and wrinkles, that addressed the pigmentation issues, and then of course ultimately hydrated the skin. And again, just not to be a broken record, but I didn't just want that for right here. I wanted it for everywhere. And it made sense for Diane's case, and it made sense for my other career. And the result of that was we have this ingredient list that I believe is I think there's only 12 items on there. And if you flip over many of your other products at home, I think you're going to see a lot longer lists. And we were able to accomplish that by having these workhorse ingredients that do, they're multifaceted ingredients. So like the vitamin C, for instance, in this case, that's helping with the fine lines and wrinkles in that it's stimulating the collagen and it's plumping the skin that way, but it's also addressing the pigmentation, and it's also doing things to help smooth out texture irregularities. So, it's kind of accomplishing all of those things just in that one ingredient, which helping us keep the list a bit shorter. We also had laid out that we did not want a product where I think that water can be an important ingredient in a product, don't get me wrong, but there's something disheartening to me when I flip over a bottle and see that water is the first ingredient on it, especially when it's at a certain price point. Most of us were lucky enough to have water readily available to us. So.
And then additives as well. I mean,
Yeah, so we wanted to really stay away from chemical additives and preservatives, and that was something that, like the vitamin C, for instance, in the case of Europelab's technology that's available, it's microencapsulated. Sometimes when you read about it in like vitamin form, like taking it, it's like liposomal is another way that it's sort of described. But each vitamin C molecule, our vitamin C is wrapped in a sugar molecule. So it's an otherwise very volatile ingredient that's super protected by this molecule. So it's not as light sensitive, it's not as sensitive to oxidization, but to take that a step further, we our packaging contributed to how we could avoid using some preservatives as well.
We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm going to go off script, ladies and gentlemen, for a minute. So Tracy, you helped Peter with his project, right? You were on the team?
Well, I had the pleasure of meeting Peter in Las Vegas at the Cosmocross show with Jolene, and that was really the conversation. It was one of our other employees in Europelab, Catherine, that really headed up the majority of the project with Sarah. But I had the pleasure of meeting with them and just discussing, really highlighting ingredients. We had such a great conversation. I myself love biodynamic farming, and I think that there was just this great connection. And I think that, you know, we can't deny that.
What was the biggest challenge delivering on the brief that Peter and Jolene gave you from because when I look at this, like 12 ingredients, that doesn't seem difficult. And there's like salicylic acid in there, and there's this coffee. It doesn't seem that difficult. But of course, sometimes making something simple is far harder than just piling stuff on. From your perspective, what was the challenge here?
Well, I think what the biggest challenge for us is to get and think outside of the box. We have a tendency in skincare to follow the industry, but what I loved about Peter was that he was really in touch with what the market was asking for in that simplicity. So for us, it was a really wonderful challenge where we could also, you know, bring to market something that we felt that was needed as well too, with that approach, being simplistic, with the packaging, with the preservatives, all of those really, really important details that coming into consideration. It's not difficult actually for us. It's actually a pleasure when we get these types of projects because it allows us to, you know, think outside of the box as well and come up with brand new ideas. And Manon would probably be even better to highlight some of the amazing things that she's discovered just through these very preliminary conversations with
okay, we'll come back to that. So Peter, I'm assuming this is green, it's full of these ingredients, so I'm guessing it's going to come in like a Whole Foods type packaging, you know, brown paper cover, something earthy, gritty, right? Grungy.
Yeah, no. So one would think so.
We'll come back to that in a minute. I jumped the
Yeah.
gun a bit. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. And actually, this photo from our perception study. So, in you know, Tracy and Manon and Catherine and Sarah and everyone did so much to put us at such ease and put faith in their ability to formulate this product, but to sort of de-riskify even a step further, Jolene and I wanted to do our own independent perception study. So the way in which we did that, which we appreciated their flexibility, we were able to create a sample order of our raw material, and we had to get scrappy and sort of, you know, package it ourselves and do it all this kind, like literally in our kitchen kind of way, which is not the perception we want the product to have, but pieced it together. And we created a study with, we had a 2% attrition rate. We started out with 45 participants, we lost one. So we wound up with 44, and we sent products, just again, raw material, not a branded experience, but the raw material in some little frosted glass bottles that we had gotten from a little shop, to 45 participants in all corners of the world, ranging in ages, races, climates, you name it. And we checked in with them multiple times throughout the course of 30 straight days of use. And we checked in with them, I think, at like the 1 week period, the 2 week period, and then at the very end, we provided them with a digital survey. And in being really honest, you can see here from this graphic that 40 of the people gave us that it was a positive first impression. And then when we asked, would you recommend this product to a friend, we felt like it was a little scary that of those people, 8 of them said that they wouldn't, and 22 of them were sort of passive on it, and only 14 were like, sure, we would tell friends about this. But it allowed us to then ask more questions and say, what I mean, everyone seemed to really love the product. What was it? Well, and most of it had to do with the fact that they wouldn't, in its current form, in that state, they didn't want to give it to a friend. There wasn't information on the bottle. There wasn't nice packaging that they were able to source. There wasn't a robust website and social media presence yet at that point that they could direct somebody to, that, you know, these are all the things that you can kind of lean on with a fully branded product and experience. So that was the one reason that people said that they wouldn't. It had nothing to do with the formula or reactions to the formula. Those were all positive, but it really drove home the point that the way this presented is going to matter.
So you're telling me those stock packaging you bought on Amazon and assembled in your kitchen wasn't cutting it?
Weirdly enough, no.
No. Okay, so let's see what you did about it.
So here's our beautiful packaging. At least I like to think so. I'd like to point out that the bottle probably looks like it's black or gunmetal color here, but it's actually violet glass. The reason we did this is because the only spectrum of light that can penetrate this violet glass that is sourced from the depths of Germany or in the Netherlands. I mean, we made it really hard on ourselves. Is that only infrared can get through. So what that means is that that light spectrum will kill bacteria or even like microfungi and things like that. So all the bad stuff would die, and it's like it's a natural preservative like you wouldn't believe. I encourage anyone who's thinking about their packaging to look into violet glass, look into some of the studies. You can see like a cherry tomato that's stored in clear glass, amber glass, violet glass. After X number of days, I mean, this tomato, it's scary how long a tomato stays perfectly preserved in violet glass for over a month versus 2 days in clear glass, and it's growing fur on it and there's weird juices coming out of it and things. So that was one of the reasons that we went with the violet glass packaging. And then you can see that there's a wax seal on the side of on the front of our box. We did that just as sort of to pay homage to the fact that I was having postal exchanges with Jolene and her mother in terms of the products that I was sending in the early days of things. So that was sort of a call to those days. We worked with a really fantastic designer. We were lucky enough to find a designer who at the time was working for Jaguar Range Rover in the UK, but had been furloughed due to the pandemic. So he was looking for work and he was really collaborative, and we were able to create something truly beautiful. I think that even the most persnickety of eyes in the fashion industry are very blown away by. Actually, I have some here. it's in the box.
Hey, can you bring it out of the box so we can see it?
Sure thing.
Actually, I'll stop sharing so people can see you.
So this is kind of nice to point out too. So when you bring it out, when you first receive it, it has an aluminum cap on it, and the pump is separate from it. So what that allows is for people who subscribe to the product and have it on a recurring order, they can opt to not receive a pump each time. So that's another way in which we've sort of greenified the process for people. But it's all of the text that's on the bottle is actually like physically bonded to it. They use powdered glass in the ceramic ink, so it's like heat fusion to this glass bottle, and it's really difficult. Like it would be very hard to scratch off. So I wish you could see that it's purple. I don't know if enough light's getting through, but it really shows how deep the glass is.
And then Peter, one last question on that. The size, that's a pretty big
Yes.
bottle. So why such a big bottle?
So this is 6.76 ounces or 200 milliliters versus a 1 ounce serum, which again, another one of the pain points for me in piecemealing all those serums together was to cover your whole body in something like that was nearly impossible, very expensive. And I also was not such a fan of the fact that you were having to unscrew something every single time and expose it to air. And they were talking about all these volatile ingredients and sensitive ingredients and things. So this way we have a pump on it because you're going to be covering your whole body in it, and also to eliminate, all the exposure to the air.
I see. Got it. Let me get back to our screen sharing here.
And then, of course, lastly, once we had a beautiful product, a beautiful formula, beautiful packaging, came the commercialization piece. We are a 75% direct-to-consumer business and a 25% select wholesale business or wholesale retailer business. I say select because it's been important for us in the early days to work with other independent locations that have customers that are similar, have similar interests to ours. So we have like a wellness center in Venice Beach in Los Angeles, and then we have a clothing boutique that sells, brands that like-minded people to our customers are also buying, and they have a small apothecary section and stuff. So we've been very curated about where we go, and that's also in part because in the early days of being launched, we really wanted to refine our direct consumer processes and have our feet underneath us in a really good spot before approaching the bigger stores that have many doors. So that's where we stand now. And then last and certainly not least is the ultimate test, which is our customer reviews, of which right now we have 47 5-star reviews, which is incredible. I wish we could quantify the text messages, the DMs, the emails, everything we've gotten back from people. I would safely say 99% have been a 5-star review in terms of what we've gotten back from everyone. And the only time that there's ever been any sort of like confusion is typically somebody who's either misusing the product or misunderstanding how to use the product, or maybe it was somebody even like my dad who just chose to not read the instructions at all or something and might have had some issues there. But everyone's been really pleased and blown away with
what is it about instructions? So a couple of questions here, Peter. So how should the product be used to get maximum benefit? Tracy told us that you got to make this part of a customer's routine to improve compliance. So how should your product be used and why?
So the way that we recommend it most commonly, because it is again a head to toe product, and these products work really well on damp skin, is as soon as you get out of the shower, this can be your first step head to toe while your skin is still damp. That you can use that water without having to put water in our product to help deliver the product a bit deeper. But we also have like some doctors that use it, for instance, that are constantly washing their hands between patients, and rather than putting like a thick creamy lotion on, they're putting this on their hands. Or if you just wash your face in the evening and you're not taking a full shower, to follow with that. It does tend to work best on slightly damp skin. That being said, in my case, like as a man and having more sebaceous glands, I can get away with putting it on sort of my dry skin and not even needing to follow up with a moisturizer, particularly in months where it is, August in Florida or something like that's not going to be necessary at all. But if I'm in Vail in the middle of January, then I might want to follow up with something a little heavier.
And then Peter, from your customer feedback, what is it that people really love about the product? What are the attributes that make people say, yeah, I love this, I'm going to buy again, or I'm going to buy it as a gift? And then final question, follow up to that is, do people really understand the whole ingredient part of it? Are people like, wow, look at these ingredients, or does that ingredient component do much in terms of the customer experience? Are people even aware what's in the bottle, or they just love the bottle, they use it, they feel great, and Bob is your uncle?
Well, to answer your first question, which was what do people love about it and what's got them coming back for more and that type of thing, I think first of all, upon first using it, your skin feels good, and then it leaves you with this what I call a satin finish. It's not glossy. You're not necessarily mattified. You just look healthy with like just the most minimal amount of sheen. Jolene and I both tried this on our dads once the first time, and we literally had them put it on half their face and not the other half, so that our skeptical dads could see just that sort of instant result. But then long term, after using it for a couple of weeks, you really feel the improved quality, and you'll start to notice the pigmentation differences and things. What actually got Jolene most excited about the product, my business partner, is she and many other women actually that I know, not so much guys, have what's called keratosis pilaris, and it's the little kind of bumpies that are on the back of your arm, typically in like the drier months and things. She, after I think 2 or 3 days of using this product, after a lifetime of trying to get rid of keratosis pilaris and nothing else did it, this completely wiped it out. And then we started getting that feedback from many other customers who had, kind of texture irregularities that were reporting how much smoother and just ultimately nicer looking their skin looks. So that's a long way of answering your question, but that's sort of been what it has been.
And then the ingredients.
So the ingredients, I think, for people who are skincare enthusiasts, these ingredients are very important. We highlight the buzzier ones on the front, like our hero ingredients: fractionated hyaluronic, poppy seed extract, and stabilized vitamin C are laid out on the front. And then of course they exist in more technical terminology in the back. But people I know that are very into skincare are excited about that combination of ingredients.
Got it.
Okay, and then lastly, just to cover the learnings of this and to anyone who's in this process, just to give you that last little bit of steam and fuel to get you through your week, you have to be patient. These things are absolutely going to take time, particularly if you're being careful and thorough, whether that means it's a perception study or whether that means you had to order glass from the depths of the Netherlands and therefore your pump had to be custom made to fit said glass. You have to take the time to make sure every detail is not perfect, but up to your standards. And that's can be difficult. It can be difficult not to put too much pressure on yourself. And I would say in order to not buckle under that pressure and to maintain your enthusiasm and love for things would be to celebrate the little victories along the way. Like I remember the first day we received our finished product that was in the final packaging, the raw material was in it. We got all these pallets. We were so excited. And then like 10 minutes later, there was some fire we had to put out and we were no longer celebrating that. And I think we've learned to look back and be like, we need to relish in these big moments more to keep our momentum going. Playing to your strengths is huge. In terms of knowing who to source for different questions like Europelab, I don't consider chemistry one of my strengths, so we go to them for those things. Jolyn is the organization person. I'm more the creative person. So playing to whatever your strengths are, and with that in mind, making sure that when you're seeking out feedback from people along the way, that you're really careful about that. It's an iterative process. It's something that you are putting your name ultimately behind, and things can get overproduced. It can be dangerous, I think, to ask people who maybe are not, don't ask somebody who's unhappy with their job. I would say that somebody who's really unhappy working for somebody else and you're doing this exciting project, don't ask them for their advice. Or maybe somebody's in a completely different industry who has no interest in skincare at all whatsoever. There's really not so much reason to get advice like on your creative process from somebody who is a more pragmatic individual who works strictly with numbers. So be careful about that. Yeah, I wouldn't ask your tax accountant what they think of your campaign, because ultimately they probably don't care. Picking the right partners, this is a huge testament, of course, to Europelab, but also with everyone along the way, your vendors, your suppliers. You're going to be in relationships with these people for a long time. Like I pointed out twice now, our pump had to be custom made. So that's somebody that we're going to be in bed with, so to speak, for a long time. So you want to make sure you're choosing everyone carefully and appropriately, and that they are experts in their fields and can give you and convey their advice in the best way possible. And lastly, make sure they're dependable.
Great. Peter, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we're running 4 minutes over, so I'm going to bring this party to a close. Thank you to our panelists. We are Manon for providing that amazing in a record time coverage of the skin and all the problems that you can have. Tracy going through all the ingredients. I never thought I could be excited about half the stuff on that list, but Tracy somehow manages to make these things exciting. And then Peter, it's just a wonderful, beautiful story to hear what you and Jolyn have been able to accomplish. Can't wait to see what happens. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, you should eat your heart out. He's sending me a bottle of Protégé here in Switzerland, which is very dry. And the water is so alkali, it's got a pH of like 14. Anyway, we're going to be back on Friday, January 14th, where we're going to go do a deeper dive into feminine hygiene. And then later next month, end of the month, we're going to come back and talk about SPF. And with that, I also want to thank our sponsors, Europelab, a division of Derme. Again, if you have any questions, you want to get in touch with them, talk about ingredients, formulation, product ideas, call Sarah. She is awesome. Founder's guarantee from me and Peter that she'll be the right person to talk to. And the best thing about these guys, if they can't help you, they'll just tell you we can't help you and they won't waste your time. With that, I want to thank you for joining us on a Friday and hope to see you again soon. Take care. Bye.